thank you so much again for showing up and playing with me and continuing these conversations. And today, let's talk about communication. So there are various models that are that give us an idea. As trainers, as coaches, as therapists, we use them to help our clients have better communication or more effective communication. And in a way, people think communication is just talk, talk, talk. So there we go. So what do you...
Right, and there's lots of different types of communication. There's, verbal, nonverbal. We communicate in all different kinds of ways, some that we're not aware of, energetically, etc. But what communication strategies would you like to focus on today?
There are a couple of them, more than a couple of them, but the first one that I want to talk about is verbal communication, and it is using the E&P model. And E&P model is emotional and physical. So the way physicals communicate is different than the way emotionals communicate. And this E&P model was introduced again by my mentor's mentor, Dr. John Kappas at the Santa Monica University. And there's a story to it. You want to hear the story?
I love story time. Break it out.
Okay. So he and his wife are going through a divorce. And so they went to a mediator, a marriage family therapist, whatever it was in those days. This is, the 60s. And he was always brought up as the bad guy. Like, oh, you are insensitive. You don't care. You don't listen. You don't talk. You don't communicate. And he's like, what? I am trying. I'm doing my best. What more do you want me to do? And, he was in his 30s. And, this went on and on. So they changed a few therapists. I think so. That's how the story goes. And everyone made him look like the bad guy. And he's like, man, I teach all these hundreds of students every year on hypnosis. So it has to do with the subconscious mind. So he started doing his own research, because he had this whole plethora of students and clients to work with. And being him, who he is, he started reading, analyzing, introspecting, and then he came up with that it's just that the world did not know too much about his type of people. And it so happens that I am his type of person. Mm-hmm. I'm an emotional and an inferential person. So I take in information inferentially, and when I hear something, it takes me time to get it. I don't, because in computer language, it's said there's input, there's processing, there's output. So when I'm in the input mode, I'm not processing anything. I'm just input, like just give it to me, input. And later on, I will process it. And later on, I will do my output. So people who are not reacting or not responding or not saying anything and are just in the listen mode, and if the other person is like trying to get something out of you because they haven't, they're frustrated, being a young mom or whatever it is, then they feel like you don't say anything, you don't care, you don't do anything, but that person is just in the input mode. So, but you have to know this. So as a therapist, you have to know this. But in the 60s and 70s, when people did not know it, because his theory was not out yet, they thought like, okay, his kind of people are the people who don't care and they just ignore their partners and they are not good communicators.
So in that story, how did they end up learning how to communicate, since he and his wife had different strategies? How did they bridge that gap?
Okay. So definitely they went through the divorce. But
they did.
They did go through the divorce, because you can't be a coach or therapist to your wife and partner. You could save the world, but when it comes to your own burning house, you need the fire brigade.
Well, it sounds like that's what helped him learn. That experience helped him learn his theory that he then shared with everyone else.
Yes. And I find it very effective, because when I went to study in the school, until that time, I was 39 and a half. And my thing, I had come to this point in my life where I felt like I do all the right things and I get all the wrong results. Something must be wrong with me. And everyone else in the world has it figured out. It's just me. I'm the one who has something wrong going on with them. Like I am wrong because no one else in the world has the troubles that I do. No one else seems to be struggling with what I'm struggling with. It must just be me. Okay. So I was nearing my big O, 40. And everything is a big O, 20 is a big O, 30 is a big O, 40, 50. But anyway, I was like, okay, this is just me. And I actually woke up. I still remember the day when I woke up. It was June 2nd. I woke up and I said, oh, I have to call daddy in 6 days and wish him happy birthday. But before that, in 4 days, I will be 39 and a half. And from then on, in 6 months, I'm going to be 40. So if I don't do something about my life right now, at this very moment, beginning today, because I know one thing, that time has a tail, but its tail is stuck in front of its head. It's like the magical unicorn. So if you must grab time, you have to grab it when it is coming towards you and not when it's passing by you. So I said, I have to do something now. And so I knew I had to do something because I didn't want to be a person who like reaches 40 and then their life goes downhill. I didn't want to do that. So when I came into the HMI School of Hypnotherapy in Los Angeles, California, and I started learning about E&P, I realized, oh my God, I attract all my opposites because I'm an E. The people in my life are P's, like I'm an emotional. The people in my life are physicals. I'm an inferential person, and most of the people in my life are literal people. And because they talk, they say they get it, they are comfortable in their body, they go out and talk to people, they sit back. So their life is good. They know what they are doing. They know what they want. I am assuming because everyone is so happy, they must be getting the results they are seeking and desiring. And it just must be me. Yeah, that's what was my story.
Interesting. So can you tell us, according to the model, what would be the basic, I don't know, say adjectives or description of an emotional versus a physical, just a real simple capture,
Yeah.
incorporating, you gave us the story. Now, if you want to just give us the concepts.
Okay. Yes, definitely. An emotional person is a person, like whatever is defined as an emotional person, is a person who has control over his emotions because you could call him a thinker, but there can be feelers who are emotionals too. Because right now I'm balancing both worlds, but I'm still an emotional. So they can keep a poker face. Like when something is going on in the world, they have the poker face on. Hi, how's it going? Yeah, let's do our project. Let's do our work. Let's engage in our activities. And then I can go back home and drink or have a shower or binge on Lifetime movies or go sleep, or cook or go help my neighbors with whatever projects they have. And even if they don't have a project, I can come up with a project for them and then help them do it, go fix their fence, because that's how emotionals are. They distract themselves from the reality because within themselves they are processing everything that's going on. So that physical activity helps them like ground themselves in their body and stay away from things that they feel they have no control over. That's an emotional. And a physical is someone who's very comfortable in their physical body. They're extremely comfortable in their physical body. So if something, they are the people you would say who wear their heart on their sleeves. So if they are mad, they will scream and yell. If they are upset, they will cry. First they will scream, then they will cry, and they will do that all together. And then they will hug you and tell you, I'm sorry. That's a physical. And physicals and emotionals attract each other. And of course, no one is 0 and 100. It's Boolean. It's not Boolean, like, oh, it's 100% physical and 100% emotional. It's never like that. Everyone is along a spectrum. So like most people, functioning people on the planet are between 30 and 70. Anything that goes to 80 and 20 is like borderline clinical cases, and anything that's beyond 80 is definitely clinical cases that they need to be medicated, and that's how they can function. But those in between 30 and 70, emotional, physical, you can just understand and help them understand who they are and the people they attract in their life. So if they really get it, they'll be like, oh, that's a physical, that's why they do like this. Oh, that person is an emotional, and that's why they are feeling like this, and this is how their response is. It gets better. And you also know who you are. If you know you are an emotional, you're like, you don't think like the world has something against you. This is who I am. This is how I operate. So self-acceptance becomes easier, because that's what happened to me. I realized half of the world is like me. It's just that they are not part of my world because I'm attracting my opposites.
Right. And so learn to give yourself time to process things. That would be the main difference, right? That you, as an emotional, need the time to process, where somebody that's a physical may not need that.
And a physical is comfortable in their body. Physicals age gracefully. Like when you look at them and they're growing older and they have wrinkles and they have gray, and they're completely okay with that. But an emotional is not comfortable looking different than their ideal version of who they are. So people who go through more surgeries or, plastic surgeries or, Botox treatments or whatever it is to look young and beautiful the way they think they are emotionals, because they are not comfortable in their body. They need to always have that face. They need to always have that body. But physicals are like, okay, so I'm fat. Okay, so I'm flabby. Okay, my boobs are sagging. Okay, so I have a few wrinkles. That's fine. I'll just wear makeup today and I'll be fine. I'm comfortable in my body. So physicals are comfortable in their physical body. Emotionals are comfortable with their emotions, but not comfortable in their body. And physicals are not comfortable with their emotions. They need to talk about it, and they might repeat their stories.
Excellent. Excellent. So is there a way for people to get a sense of who they are, which way they are? How would people try if they said, oh, that sounds so cool, what Kaya was saying? How do I figure out which one I am?
Just look at you the way you're sitting right now. Are you sitting cross-legged? Are your toes touching each other? Are your heels touching each other? Tell me, Kimberly Ann, are your heels?
Mine are, my feet are crossed.
Your feet are crossed, so you are an emotional. That's the first thing I will tell you, that emotionals have their feet crossed. Physicals have their feet wide apart, because they're very comfortable with their physical energy, and part of your physical energy is your sexual energy. Okay. And if you tell them, oh, no, I'm not like this, and they'll put their feet apart. But even when the feet are apart, the toes are pointing towards each other, or the toes are away from each other. So when you
I tend to sit crisscross applesauce. What is that?
Say it again. Crisscross applesauce.
I tend to sit, a lot of times I sit with my legs, like I sit like this in crisscross applesauce, like
the Padmasana or the lotus posture. Yes. Yes. I mean,
so I can sit up straight.
Yes. And that might be, I'm assuming you're a yoga practitioner. I don't know if do you do yoga?
I do some yoga, yes. Not as much as I would like, but yes.
Okay. Have you always been a person who sat in Padmasana or the lotus posture?
Always?
I mean, when I say always, like you can remember, is this your most comfortable way of sitting?
I like to sit where I feel my body has support. I like to sit in a way where I feel like I have good posture and I can just relax into that. And being tall, if my legs are like far out, it's kind of a strain on my body. So I try and find ways that my body feels relaxed but yet is supported in a good posture.
So one of the things I can tell you is you're an athlete and you're a person who works with your body.
Yes.
And so those are the whole things that come up, because I am a therapist and I look at a person and I can say those things. Okay. So if you stood up and you looked down at your toes, would your toes be parallel to each other? Would your feet be parallel to each other? Would your toes slightly point towards each other, or would your toes slightly point away from each other?
I'm not sure.
I know
I
you have
think
never
I'd be
looked.
straight. I think I'd be straight. I don't
Again,
know.
that is a
You want
person
me to
who's
do it?
okay, just stand up and see how you feel comfortable in your body. And
Oh.
walk a little bit and just stand. And now look at your toes, how they're pointed. Just stand.
Oh, they're straight.
Okay, and stop. Now look at your toes.
They're straight.
They are straight. Yes, that's because you're an athlete. Yes. Come back, sit in your chair. People who are, and plus you have been working as a holistic coach with holistic coaches. So you have done a lot of work. Okay. You have gone through what I would call a transformation journey. Okay. A transformation process. And this is where you are. But when you look at people, you should see, that is what I would tell to the viewer right now, that see how your feet are. And like I said, no one is black and white. No one is all or nothing. No one is 0 or 1. And there are people who are 50-50. Okay. Like I have been working on myself, and right now I am in the 50-50. I can be 50% physical and 50% emotional. And I'm completely okay with that. But under stress, I regress to my emotional state.
So there's the key, that we have a tendency to be one or the other. If we do work, we may come into more balance, but we'll have a
Yes.
tendency under stress and in certain situations to go back to our original
Yes, because
way of communicating.
yes, our original way of communicating. And so that is the physical in the body, and then there is information that we take in literally or inferentially. Okay. Literal people, you tell them, I love you. They'll be like, thank you. Or you say, I love you. They'll be like, oh, I love you too. That's a literal person. Either they say, thank you, or I love you too. And that's a literal person, like I said. And an inferential person would be like, oh, that's so nice. Thank you. And in their head, they're thinking like, what's going on? Why are they telling me I love you? Like, do they need something? Do they mean something? What does this I love you mean? So people who are inferential, they process. They are the people who hear the unspoken. Okay. They read in between the gaps. They hear in between the spoken words. Those are inferential people. For them, it has to. So when a person is processing information inferentially, they will say something like, oh, let me think about it. Let me get back to you. Mm-hmm. But a person who takes in literally, they'll be like, oh, I got it. This is what it is. Yeah, we can do that. So sometimes they make a decision in a hurry and regret in leisure.
Snap decisions.
Yes, snap decisions, like, oh, I feel yes now, I feel no now, it changes. But an inferential person, because it takes them time to process and come to a decision, and it's all internal, they will usually not go and talk to anyone. And if they do, this person has to be their confidante. Inferential people need a confidante that they can bounce things off of and really be solid sure, because they hate looking like a fool. I mean, everybody hates looking like a fool, but a literal person will be like, oh, but it was then, but now I'm thinking different. And they're completely okay with changing their mind, because that was right then, this is right now, and it's okay. But an inferential person, because they take time to decide, when they decide, they have all the reasons backed up, so they can do great PhDs. Because they know how to defend their theses, their findings. They have so many ways of coming back at you and letting you know that this is their stance and they stand corrected, they are right.
Now, would you say this is similar to the first situation where we were talking about the continuum and people being
Yes.
within a certain range, and also having, meeting in the middle and having kind of both characteristics?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Everything in the world has that, nothing is Boolean, nothing is absolute or nothing. So even inferential people, they go from 0 to 100, and literal people go from 0 to 100. And in certain situations, you might be inferential, certain situations, you might be literal, you know, like if your mom says something, a caregiver says something, someone who was your caregiver, someone you looked up to, someone you adore, whatever they say, you take it in, you know, because you trust them. When trust goes up, people get more literal. It says, oh, they said it, must be true, must be right. But there are people who are skeptics who'll be like, oh, I want to think about it. I want to talk to someone else about it and ask them, what do you think about it? Because they can't do the thinking on their own. They want to tell the story to someone else and ask them what they think about it. That's the emotional person, you know? So you're bouncing your idea off of a lot of people. But then there are people who are 50-50. When I went in and took this test myself, I was a 50-50. And a 50-50 person, you can, in literal terms, can be called extremely naive or hypersuggestible. Another word is somnambulistic, you know, they are sleepwalkers. So whatever, no matter if you tell them literally or inferentially, they take in the information. And I am one of those rare 5% on the planet who are the hypersuggestible, somnambulistic, naive people. Whatever you say, I take it in. I do not reject anything. I just take it in, and then I come up with my conclusion a few days later.
Can part of your conclusion, once you process, can it be a rejection ultimately?
Yes, you know, but I still remain open because there are certain people who will think this way, and I have to stay open to that. So I don't make it mine, but I don't reject it and say, no, this is wrong. No, this is right for certain people. Just because it's not right for me doesn't mean it's not right. It's just not right for me right now.
So it would be a rejection for you. It would be just that information doesn't sit with you, but it still may be there for someone else.
Yes, like someone comes and says, wine is good for you and you can have it a little bit, you know, and I'm like, yeah, it is good for some people and they can have a little bit, and some people can have wine every day. It's just not good for me. I know it, and I will not go and do it just because somebody said wine is good for you, you know. So things like that. That would be an example of that.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
So are there any other properties related to E&P that you want to discuss, or would you like to? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the things is, when you always remember that, okay, how to know if the person you're talking to is inferential or literal, okay? Inferential people speak in spurts, you know, like they will tell you a short story. They will tell you a short story. They'll tell you a short story because they want you to get it, because that's their tendency. They want to get it. So they will tell you in a way that you get it. And they want you to ask them or talk to them or communicate with you. And if you don't, they will ask you, am I making sense? Is this okay with you? And that's how they talk. Okay. So they talk in short stories and short spurts. A literal person will tell you a long, winding story, a very long story. And they could tell you for half an hour. And if they are a physical with full animation, they will talk to you. And then at the end of the day, you'll be like, oh, this person says long stories. So maybe they like to listen to a long story. And you try telling them a long story and you look at their eyes, they have glazed out. They've checked out. So they love to tell you long stories, but because they are literal, they cannot listen to a long story. You have to keep interacting with them. And the moment you say something, they are like always like, oh, and I have something to say to that. Yeah, I have something to say to that. So for them, the processing part is a challenge. So it has to be like, you know, interactive. With a physical, literal, you have to keep on interacting with them when you're communicating with them. And sometimes maybe even give them a gentle touch, you know, but nowadays we can't touch. But if it's your family member, better give them a touch, you know. So they are like, oh, okay, there's some communication going on, you know, something is happening. I mean, don't touch them all over, but you know what I'm trying to say, you know?
Yes, yes. Connection, making that connection, making it concrete.
Yes. But if you're on the phone working with your client or on the phone with your realtor or lawyer or financial advisor, then you have to hear the words they use. Are they using long words? Are they just talk, 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 talk? Then you know that this is a literal person. When you talk to them, don't go talk, 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 you know, speak a little bit, pause, speak a little bit, pause, speak a little bit, pause. And as a hypnotherapist, when I'm talking to my clients or a prospect, the first time they come, that same sentence, I repeat it two ways. I say it the way a literal person would get it, and I say it the way an inferential person would get it. So I would say something like, oh, I really like you. And I'll be like, man, I love people who say things like that. And they'll be like, because if you go and tell an inferential person, I really like you, they'll be like, I don't know what they want from me now, right now. But if you tell them, I really love it, when people say things and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, so it's not, they don't feel like, oh, now I have to give them something because they love me or they like me. It's like, okay, So when you know how to say the same thing in both ways, then you can communicate with both kinds of people, because they could be just a stranger. And how do you know how to talk to them? And of course,
And be heard.
And be heard, and be heard, and be understood, again.
Excellent.
If I could be anywhere, I'd be here with you, sharing our healing hearts, our hope and our truth. Joy overflows here at the crossroads. Here at the crossroads. Oh, here at the crossroads.